Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my real pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to do so. So my name is Steve Ritchie, and the subject I'll be talking about tonight is humanitarian aid, and quite simply, who needs it. What I have here is a list of countries, and this is currently a list of countries that myself and my colleagues have the good fortune to travel in. We travel there working with mainly humanitarian aid organisations, development organisations, and our main focus is basically trying to make humanitarian, life-impacting programmes work. Intrinsically, it's areas that are impacted by conflict, areas where it's very difficult to deliver what would be termed traditional programme delivery. Now, I'm extremely lucky where I get to see some absolutely fantastic parts of the world. I'm so lucky where I meet with wonderful people. However, I only do so for a few weeks at a time. I'm in one country for a few weeks, or my colleagues are there for a few weeks, and then we have to move on to the next location. What I would like you to do is to please think, and when you can, please give appreciation for the men and women who have dedicated their lives to being in those countries and delivering humanitarian programming services that really make a difference to people's lives. And that's very important. I also look at this list of countries, and I have to say, apart from being happy, it also depresses me. And the reason why it depresses me is because that list of countries is getting bigger. Why is it getting bigger? Well, regrettably, global security, as we know it, is not in a good condition. Global security is quite simply on downfall. Really, since 2000, since 2007, the last several years have seen really negative impacts on global security. As it is, there's 162 countries in the world. 162. Out of those 162, 151 countries are involved in some form of conflict. That only leaves 11 countries in the entire world who are not involved in conflict at some stage. That's shameful. As a generation, we have to look at ourselves and say, what a disaster we are. We know about the future, we can send people to the moon, we can do all sorts of wonderful things with communication devices, new inventions, but really in terms of global security, what are we leaving behind for our next generations? A very unsafe parcel, I have to say. Whenever I look at that as well, I also think about what's happening inside those countries. Sadly, the paradigm has changed. The ball game has changed. As it is at current state, with countries involved in conflict, 90% of casualties are estimated to be non-combatants. That's men, women, children, who basically have the design of having a peaceful life, going to school, rearing their families. However, the situation has changed shamefully to the point where those people are being directly targeted. This is the worst situation that we've been in, basically, since the Second World War. Why? Well, by directly targeting civilian populations, of course, it adds to political pressure. Just last week, Afghanistan released the figures. 2014 had the highest recorded civilian casualty rate ever. Within Ukraine, at the minute, we have both of the armed sides deliberately targeting men, women, and children. Cast your mind back to last summer. The Yazidi populace in North Iraq, they were directly targeted to the point of genocide. The paradigm has changed. How do we deal with that? I'll give you a concept called the doomsday clock. Now, the doomsday clock, the original concept was back to 1947. It's a figurative clock. And basically, we have a panel of learned individuals, nuclear scientists, physicists, professors, and such like, and they sit down on a regular basis. They look at basically the condition of armament within the globe. They look at global warming, economic factors, They look at political stability, they look at disease. January, last month, that panel decided that we are 3 minutes to midnight. 3 minutes. Tick, tick, tick. That's the first time that we have been 3 minutes to midnight. In history of the clock, the history of the doomsday clock, we have only been there 3 times. First one, 1952, with the Cuban Missile Crisis with USSR. The last time, 1982, where communications between the US government and USSR completely broke down. Here we are in 2015 with 3 minutes to midnight. That concerns me. That concerns me massively. It concerns me to the point I think, what can we really do about it? It also concerns me to the point that I need to be thinking about aid. Within these countries of conflict, clearly we create situations where the traditional means of the population sustaining itself are broken down. Law and order, systems within a country are completely broken down completely. So aid, in terms of what it is, basically we look towards aid as a temporary step, where we go in, we provide short-term solutions to basically help life, provide basic medical. Every human being, right across the globe, every human being is entitled to have basic medical treatment. They're entitled to have food in their belly. They're entitled to have a roof over their head. They're entitled to have education. Within these countries, it's extremely difficult to achieve. Hence my professional approach, where I assist organisations in steering the programs. How do we do that? We interact with communities. We have a positive community buy-in to the programs that we want to deliver. We deliver capacity building in terms of training. We also obtain an overview of those countries in terms of the current risk levels. Clearly, we want to be able to deliver aid, however, we don't want our aid workers to be victims. In terms of aid, well, if you look at the simple components of humanitarian disasters, such as an earthquake, such as a flood, hurricane, famine, those are all tend to be situations where aid is required. However, given the current state of the globe today, more and more aid is required in countries basically due to conflict, principally due to conflict. One of the big challenges that we have is actually getting access into these countries that we work in. And one of the challenges we have, believe it or not, tends to be, well, if you look back to my original list of countries, thinking about the host governments. And believe it or not, the host governments in a lot of these countries don't want us to be there. Very often, it's the government themselves who have caused the issue inside the country. Very often, it's the government who have increased the conflict levels. So actually getting access through governments who again very often mistrust aid organisations, very often mistrust the reason, the very core reason why we want to be in these countries to help people in the first place. Conflict, I have to say, is the biggest challenge. And I look at conflict in any part of the world. I'm originally from Northern Ireland, just outside Belfast. And I think back to that conflict. I think back to the conflicts that we're involved in different parts of the world. And I have to say, there are 2 recurring components regardless of where it is in the world. And those 2 components are power and money. Money and power. If you have money, you will have power. If you have power, you will have money. And very often, the people that have the power and the money, of course they're in the minority, but that power and money, that is gained at the expense of the common people. The men, the women, the children, who want to go about having a normal life. It's as simple as that. And dress it up whichever way you want to. You can dress it up in terms of thinking about geographical gain, you can think about tribal components, you can think about religious motivation. It doesn't matter what it is, it still comes back to that same old thing, power and money. Thinking about cost. Cost is a significant restriction. Of course, flying people to different parts of the world actually costs money. Putting them in an accommodation building in a particular part of the world costs money. Actually getting them to transport themselves from point A to point B costs money. Actually purchasing, buying the aid that we want to deliver, of course that costs money. Last year, on a global level, it's estimated globally that 1.47 trillion US dollars were spent on defense. $1.47 trillion. Try and find that amount of money down the back of your sofa. However, on the other side, aid from donor countries amounted to 1.35 billion. 1.35 billion and 1.47 trillion, I think we would agree there's a significant difference. I'm not a mathematician, I'm not an accountant, but I can tell straight away there's a huge deficit there. What does that tell me? That tells me, well, clearly there's money to be made in killing people, but there's no money to be made in helping people. Now, of course, I can understand why countries need to spend money on their defence. I think that's a pretty logical reason. But I have to ask myself the question, do we have things in the right order? Is the money that we're spending on defence very often the core of the problem? Would it not make more sense in a lot of cases to invest more money into prevention? Principal challenge we have these days is security, getting access for people into countries. What I have behind me here is the photograph of 3 of our aid colleagues who lost their lives. They lost their lives within Syria. They lost their lives recently at the hands of Islamic State. They lost their lives focusing on helping a fellow man. Unfortunately, within this day and age, and I find this incredible, we as aid workers are being directly targeted. Aid workers are now seen as legitimate targets by armed groups. I find that incredible. Why? Well, quite simply, they're soft targets. Kidnapping, the shootings, all of the nasty things, the robberies and such like. And of course, being in a country which is not secure, where there's bombs and there's bullets, obviously you stand a chance of being caught by particular... Hello? Oh, I'm still here. So that, for me, is a real challenge. To give you an idea of where we are at the minute and the global trend, the global change with the trend. Going back to 2006, which is on the far left-hand side, in 2006 we were looking at around about 100 plus attacks directly against aid organisations. Take that to 2014, and these figures are still coming in. Where are we now? That's over 300. If you look at the number of victims back in 2003, yeah, we were just over 200 thereabouts. As we are now, in 2014, we're sitting just over close to 500. I have to say, that's shameful. Aid workers, sadly, are seen as political tools. Very often is seen as an extension of government policy, and therefore bona fide targets. Take a situation, polio. Polio, as you know, was a disease that was very much in decline. Very much in decline. We had a situation back in 2012 where an intelligence agency from a particular country decided to mount an operation to capture Osama bin Laden. Part of that operation was to basically use a fake polio vaccination program in the pursuit of gaining DNA. Well, that's all well and good having that. However, after the operation to capture Osama bin Laden, what happened? That agency decided to go global with what they actually did and told the world that they had set up a fake polio vaccination program. What was the immediate impact of that? The immediate impact was a spike and a number of direct attacks against polio vaccinators going through the roof. Today, 2015, we're at the point where being a polio vaccinator is one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. Would you believe that? We're in the point where we're trying to assist people, trying to prevent a disease which is very simply preventable with some drops. Now, it's extremely difficult to deliver. What's the cure? How do we change things? Well, I think positively, and I think very positively for the future. As I see the future, I look towards education. I look towards education at different levels as being an answer. Education itself, in its current state, has real challenges. You just have to look to Nobel Peace Prize winner Malala from Pakistan. Shot in the head, trying to achieve her education. We look at the attack in December, targeting a high school, directly targeting students. Again, education is difficult to achieve, however, it is the door to future success. For a younger generation, I have to apologise to you. I apologise, but with a smile on my face, and I apologise for really the state of what we have globally at the minute, for what my generation is leaving you. But I look towards you with a smile on my face and think about your education. I look at you, I think of future politicians. Future politicians who can negotiate future stability. I look upon our youth today and think about designers, the scientists, the people who can come through with innovative techniques to improve quality of life and basic welfare of people. I look towards you as the future accountants, thinking about third world countries where very often corruption, basic theft is endemic. How can we stamp that out? I also look towards educating governments, donor governments, key governments, and I want them to think, really, how can they assist in really what is a bit of a mess. I would really like them to think about the information that is released. I would really like them to think about the impact that their negative information has on people working within insecure, challenging environments who have no protection, other than very often no book in pen. These people are working in these areas who don't have the benefit of these guys with their guns and such like. They're there to work for the communities and live amongst the communities. It's as simple as that. So really what I'd like you to do, my closing thoughts for this big ticket component is I would like you to please think about your social conscience. How can we improve social conscience generally? Think about each and every single one of us. You've got two hands, you've got a brain. Think, how can we use those simple components for the betterment of mankind? It could simply be at a national level or international. Education, I have to say, is the door to the future. Before I ask for any questions, I'm very much aware of what I've delivered to you is perhaps not the happiest of presentations that I've ever delivered in my life. I'm a happy guy, generally. So what I want to do before I finish is to leave a smile on your face. Right, can I have 2 assistants? Yes, come on, 2 assistants. So, being a Northern Irish guy, I have to say my taste in jokes is absolutely terrible. So bear with me, and I will try and bring a smile to your face. So I have my 2 wonderful assistants. Okay, so situation is, we have a group of very bad men. Very bad guys who do terrible things to people. We have a Turkish, we have American, and we have an Irish. So basically this group of very bad people decide that they're going to execute the 3 people. And of course, terrible, we don't want to be executed. How can we avoid this? So, first person, a Turkish girl goes out, all the bad guys, they point their weapons at the Turkish group. And says, I need a plan, a simple plan. What can it be? Earthquake! As soon as she shouts earthquake, the bad guys throw their weapons down, run away, and she runs in the other direction. Fantastic. So of course, the American guys down there, that worked really well. I like that. So of course the bad guys were really angry with themselves. And, don't be so stupid, don't do it again. So of course the plan was there. All the bad guys put their weapons up. The American guys said, volcano! Bad guys threw the weapons down. He escaped. That left the Irish guy standing there on his own. And he thought, that worked very nicely for those guys. It's going to work well for me. So the Irish guy standing there. Fire! Thank you very much.